I smoothed my palms over the cool, hand-stitched ivory silk, admiring the delicate lace along the bodice. 8 long months. 8 months of sleepless nights, pricked fingers, and pure love poured into this single wedding gown. "You outdid yourself, Clara," Grandmother Evelyn said softly, stepping up beside me in the dim studio light. She adjusted her reading glasses, her hands gently touching the hem. "Your mother would be weeping tears of pure joy if she could see you in this." "I couldn't have finished it without you, Grandma," I replied, feeling a wave of warmth wash over me. "Every stitch reminds me of her. It's not just a dress. It's her memory, and it's my future with Julian." "Julian is a lucky man," Evelyn murmured, wrapping her warm arm around my shoulders. "Just make sure he knows the value of what he's getting." My phone buzzed on the wooden cutting table, cutting through the quiet moment. I smiled, seeing Julian's name flash across the screen. "Speak of the devil," I said, swiping the screen to answer. "Hey, babe, are you on your way to pick me up for dinner?" "Hey, Clara." Julian's voice came through, sounding surprisingly casual, almost distracted. "Listen, don't panic, but I stopped by your boutique earlier while you were out getting coffee with your grandmother." I frowned, looking over at the empty mannequin near the front window where my veil usually hung. A sudden knot formed in my stomach. "Julian, what do you mean? Why were you at the studio?" "Well, I needed a huge favor, and you weren't answering your phone," he explained smoothly. "Chloe had a major crisis today. A massive emergency." The mention of his ex-girlfriend made my chest tighten instantly. "Chloe? What kind of crisis could Chloe possibly have that involves my boutique?" "She had a last-minute high-profile bridal photo shoot for her modeling portfolio this afternoon," Julian said, his tone entirely unapologetic. "Her original designer canceled on her at the last minute. She was literally in tears, Clara. So, I used my spare key, unlocked your display room, and borrowed your dress for her." The air left my lungs all at once. I gripped the edge of the cutting table so hard my knuckles turned white. You did what?" I whispered, my voice trembling. "Julian, tell me you're joking right now." "I'm not joking, Clara, and please don't overreact," he sighed heavily into the speaker. "It's just a dress. She needed it way more than you do today." "Just a dress?" I yelled, my calm completely shattering as Grandmother Evelyn gasped beside me. "Julian, that is my wedding gown. I spent 8 months hand-stitching that silk with my grandmother. It has my late mother's vintage lace woven into the bodice. How could you take it without asking me?" "Because I knew you'd say no and make a huge scene out of nothing." Julian snapped back, his temper flaring. "Chloe's entire modeling career is on the line. Can't you be supportive for once? She only needs it for a few hours. Bring it back right now," I demanded, tears of pure rage stinging my eyes. "Drop whatever you are doing and bring my gown back to the studio this second, Julian." "I can't do that, Clara," he scoffed loudly. "We're already at her apartment doing light touch-ups. Besides, you're a professional designer. You own a whole boutique. You can easily just make yourself another one before our wedding next month." "Make another one?" I choked out, a sharp sob catching in my throat. "It took me nearly a year. You gave my priceless dress to your ex-girlfriend like it was a cheap rental." "Stop being so dramatic," Julian said, his voice dropping into a cold, dismissive murmur. "You're acting completely selfish right now. Chloe was stranded, and I helped a friend. If you care more about some fabric than my loyalty to people in need, maybe we need to rethink things." "Your loyalty?" I whispered, my heart breaking into 1,000 jagged pieces right there in the middle of my studio. "You broke into my workspace and stole my mother's memory for Chloe. You chose her happiness over my dignity." "I'm hanging up now, Clara," Julian replied coldly. "We will talk about this later when you calm down and decide to act like a mature adult." The line went dead with a harsh click. I stood frozen in the silent room, staring blankly at the empty space where my masterpiece had rested just hours ago. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical blade ever could. He hadn't just taken a dress. He had stripped away every ounce of trust one had built with him over the last 3 years. "Clara, darling," Evelyn whispered softly, reaching out to touch my hand, her own eyes filled with sorrow and outrage. "What did he do?" "He gave it to her, Grandma," I said quietly, wiping a stray tear from my cheek as my sorrow suddenly hardened into a cold, sharp rage. He really gave it to Chloe? That boy has lost his mind. Evelyn spat, her voice shaking with anger. No, I replied, looking up at my grandmother with absolute clarity for the first time in months. He showed me exactly who he is, and I am going to get my dress back. My hands trembled against the steering wheel as I parked outside Chloe Bennett's luxury high-rise apartment building. Every second that passed felt like a knife twisting in my chest. I took the elevator up to the top floor, my heart pounding loudly in my ears. I didn't even bother ringing the bell properly. I pounded my fist against the heavy wooden door until it swung open. Julian stood in the doorway, holding a half-empty glass of champagne. His eyes widened slightly in surprise before hardening into an annoyed glare. "Clara, what on earth are you doing here?" Julian asked, his voice dripping with condescension. "I told you to wait at your studio." "Where's my dress, Julian?" I demanded, pushing past him into the sunlit, spacious living room. "Where is it?" My breath caught in my throat as I saw her. Chloe Bennett stood near the floor-to-ceiling windows, turning gracefully in front of a full-length mirror. She was wearing my hand-stitched ivory silk gown. The custom lace bodice, designed specifically for my body and crafted in honor of my late mother, was stretched tightly across her back. "Oh, Clara, hi," Chloe purred, turning toward me with a wide, innocent smile. She held a crystal champagne flute in one hand, her blue eyes glinting with clear triumph. "Look, I am so sorry about the confusion. But honestly, the moment Julian brought it over, I completely fell in love with the design." "Take it off," I said, my voice dangerously low as I stepped toward her. "Take off my wedding dress right now, Chloe." "Clara, stop it," Julian barked, stepping firmly between Chloe and me. "Look at her. The gown fits her frame absolutely perfectly. She's doing an emergency shoot for a major bridal magazine today. Do you know how huge this exposure could be?" "I don't care about her photo shoot," I yelled, tears of frustration boiling over. "Julian, that dress was made for our wedding. I spent 8 months crafting it. It has my mother's lace on it." Chloe took a delicate sip of her champagne, offering a fake, tearful pout that didn't reach her eyes. "Clara, please don't be like that. I know it's technically yours, but a gorgeous dress like this deserves to be seen by millions first, don't you think? You can always make another one. You're so talented at sewing." "Sewing?" I repeated, glaring at her with pure disgust. "This isn't just a sewing project. This is my inheritance. This is my wedding dress." I stepped around Julian and grabbed the hem of the silk dress. "Take it off, or I will tear it off you." "Get your hands off her," Julian shouted, roughly pushing my hands away from Chloe. The force of his shove made me stumble backward onto the hardwood floor. I looked up at him in absolute shock, my palms stinging where it had hit the floor. "Julian," I whispered, staring up at the man I had spent 3 years loving. "You are acting completely insane, Clara." Julian snapped, standing over me with a cold, disgusted expression. "Look at yourself. You're acting selfish, jealous, and pathetic. Chloe needed help, and all you care about is your fragile ego." "She took my dress," I sobbed, struggling to my feet as my body shook violently. "You gave away my hard work to your ex-girlfriend." "She's not just my ex, she's my friend," Julian yelled back, his voice echoing off the high ceilings. "And right now, she's acting a lot more mature than my actual fiancé. If you keep making this ridiculous scene, Clara, I swear to God I will call off our wedding entirely." The room fell dead silent. Chloe stood behind him, a subtle, satisfied smirk playing at the corners of her lips as she adjusted the lace sleeve of my dress. Julian crossed his arms, staring down at me with cold, callous eyes, waiting for me to break, waiting for me to cry and beg for his forgiveness like I always used to when we argued. I looked into his eyes, really looked into them, and for the first time in 3 years the haze fell away. The man standing in front of me wasn't the sweet, caring partner I thought I was marrying. He was selfish, arrogant, and cruel. I wasn't in love with Julian anymore. I was in love with a ghost, a memory of someone who never actually existed. The heavy, Suffocating pain in my chest suddenly turned into a sharp, icy clarity. My tears stopped completely. "Call it off," I said softly. Julian blinked, caught off guard. "What?" "Call off the wedding, Julian," I repeated, my voice steady and completely devoid of emotion. "We're done." "Clara, don't be dramatic," Julian started, taking a step toward me, but I held up my hand, stopping him in his tracks. "Don't touch me," I spat quietly. "Keep the dress, Chloe. Enjoy wearing a stolen gown meant for a bride whose life you tried to break." "Clara, wait," Julian called out, a sudden hint of panic flickering in his eyes as he realized I wasn't screaming anymore. "You're just mad right now. Talk to me." I didn't answer. I turned on my heel and walked straight out of the apartment, the heavy front door slamming shut behind me. As I stepped into the cold afternoon air, I wiped the last remaining tear from my cheek. Julian thought he had won. He thought he could strip away my dignity and leave me broken. But as I walked toward my car, I made a silent, unshakable promise to myself. Julian Miller and Chloe Bennett would pay for every single tear I shed today. I walked back into my boutique, the heavy silence of the empty showroom wrapping around me like a cold blanket. "Clara? Child, is that you?" Grandmother Evelyn called out from the back cutting room. She rushed out, her eyes searching my pale face. "What happened? Did you get the gown back?" "No, Grandma," I whispered, sitting down heavily on the velvet sofa. "I left it there. And I left Julian." Evelyn gasped, sitting beside me and pulling my trembling hands into hers. "You broke off the engagement?" "He chose Chloe over me," I replied, staring at the empty mannequin in the corner. "He pushed me, Grandma. He stood there while she wore my mother's lace and told me I was acting crazy. I am done letting him ruin my life." "Good," Evelyn said firmly, her thumbs wiping away a quiet tear from my cheek. "You are a Vance. You carry your mother's talent and my strength. That boy never deserved you." We spent the next few hours quietly tidying the workshop. Around 8 in the evening, after Grandma had gone upstairs to rest, the silver chime above the front door rang. "I'm sorry, we're closed for the evening," I called out, wiping down the main counter. "Even for a business proposition, Ms. Vance?" A deep, smooth voice echoed through the dimly lit boutique. I turned around and froze. Standing by the entrance was a tall, imposing man in a tailored charcoal suit. His piercing gray eyes locked onto mine, exuding an air of absolute authority and power. "I don't think we've met," I said, stepping forward cautiously. "Can I help you?" "My name is Arthur Sterling," he said, extending a hand. "CEO of Sterling Global Corporations." My heart skipped a beat. "Sterling Global? You're Julian's boss." "Technically, I am his boss's boss," Arthur corrected gently, his sharp eyes taking in my swollen eyes and red cheeks. "I apologize for dropping in unannounced, but I have been quietly tracking your work for the past 6 months, Clara. Your bridal couture is extraordinary." "You know my work?" I asked, completely caught off guard. "I do," Arthur replied, pacing slowly past my sketchbooks. "Sterling Global is expanding its luxury division into international bridal fashion. I came here tonight to offer you a partnership, a head designer contract for our new global line." I stared at him in disbelief. "Julian never mentioned you were looking for local designers." Arthur stopped, a cold, sharp look crossing his features. "That is because Julian Miller told my executive board that he was the creative mind behind your latest portfolio. He claimed he was directing your studio's concepts." A harsh laugh escaped my throat. He said, "What? Julian can't even draw a straight line. He stole my portfolio?" "I suspected as much," Arthur said quietly, stepping closer. "Julian submitted your structural gown blueprints last week, claiming they were his personal concepts to secure the vice president position at my firm." "He stole my wedding dress for his ex today, Mr. Sterling," I said, the bitter truth pouring out of me before I could stop it. "He unlocked my studio, took my hand-stitched gown, and gave it to Chloe Bennett. When I confronted him, he threatened to call off our wedding. So I ended it." Arthur's gray eyes darkened with immediate, genuine anger. "He took your custom gown for his ex-girlfriend and used your professional work to scheme a promotion?" "Yes," I said, my voice shaking with renewed indignation. He used me for my talent and stepped on my dignity. Arthur stood silently for a moment, analyzing me with an intense, calculating gaze. "Julian is a fool, Clara," Arthur said, his voice dropping into a low, decisive tone. "He threw away a diamond for worthless glass. But simply canceling your wedding and letting him claim your work is not enough." "What do you mean?" I asked, looking up at him. "Julian is hosting a major corporate pitch at our annual gala in 3 weeks," Arthur explained smoothly, a dangerous smile touching his lips. "He believes he is going to walk in with Chloe, present your designs as his own, and seal his promotion. He thinks you are crushed at home." "I am crushed," I admitted softly. "Then let's use that," Arthur proposed, leaning against the wooden table. "I am offering you the head designer position tonight, complete with full corporate backing. But more than that, I want you to attend the gala with me." "With you?" I blinked, stunned. "As your guest." "As my fiancé," Arthur said calmly, his eyes holding mine. "A strategic alliance. We announce our partnership and our engagement on the same night. We strip Julian of his stolen portfolio in front of the entire corporate board, ruin his fraudulent pitch, and elevate you to the top of the industry in a single evening." I stared at the billionaire CEO, my breath catching in my throat as the sheer brilliance of his plan washed over me. "You want to fake an engagement to destroy Julian's career?" I whispered. "I want to give a brilliant woman the justice she deserves while exposing a thief in my company," Arthur corrected smoothly. "What do you say, Clara? Will you help me teach Julian Miller a lesson he will never forget?" I looked back at the empty mannequin, then up into Arthur's firm, reassuring eyes. "When do we start?" I asked. The polished silver utensils clinked softly against fine china as I sat across from Beatrice Sterling in the grand dining room of the Sterling estate. Arthur sat beside me, his steady presence calming my frayed nerves. "So, Clara," Beatrice said, setting down her wine glass. Her sharp eyes scrutinized me with polite coldness. "Arthur tells me you run a small bridal boutique downtown. How does a local tailor fit into the future of Sterling Global?" "I am not just a tailor, Mrs. Sterling," I replied smoothly, meeting her gaze without flinching. "I am a haute couture designer. My work blends traditional hand-stitch technique with modern structural silhouettes. I don't just sell dresses. I create wearable art that defines a woman's power." Beatrice arched a dark eyebrow, a slow, approving smile creeping onto her lips. "Poise and conviction. I like that. Arthur, your father always said true elegance cannot be bought. Miss Vance clearly possesses it." "I knew you would agree, Mother," Arthur said gently, placing a warm hand over mine on the linen tablecloth. "Clara is taking over our entire luxury bridal division." Before Beatrice could respond, my phone vibrated in my clutch purse. I glanced down and felt a shock of surprise seeing the name on the screen. "Excuse me for a moment," I said, stepping away toward the sunroom windows to answer. "David?" "Clara, thank God you picked up." Julian's younger brother, David Miller, whispered urgently through the receiver. "I had to call you. I am so sorry for what Julian did to you. It's sickening." "David, take a breath," I said, touched by his genuine concern. "How are you involved in this?" "I'm at Chloe's apartment right now," David explained, his tone filled with disgust. "Julian brought me over to celebrate his upcoming promotion. Clara, he gave her your hand-stitched gown. She's wearing it around the living room like a trophy, drinking champagne." My jaw clenched, but I kept my voice dead silent. "What else, David?" "He's planning something huge," David warned. Julian convinced his manager to let him host the Sterling Global Annual Gala at the Grand Regency Hotel next Friday. He told everyone he's going to announce his engagement to Chloe there, and he's presenting your entire digital design folder to Arthur Sterling as his own creation to lock in the vice president role. "He's stealing my career along with my dress," I murmured, anger burning hot in my chest. "He thinks you're sitting at home crying, Clara," David said angrily. "He told me you'd get over it in a week." I couldn't stay quiet. "You worked too hard for this." "Thank you, David," I said softly. "You have no idea how much this information helps me. Just promise me you won't let him get away with it," David pleaded. "I won't," I promised, hanging up the phone and walking back to the dining table with absolute clarity. Arthur looked up as I sat down. Bad news. Julian is hosting the Grand Regency Gala next Friday, I said, looking between Arthur and Beatrice. He plans to announce his engagement to Chloe and present my stolen portfolio directly to you, Arthur, to claim the vice president position. Beatrice scoffed loudly, dabbing her lips with a napkin. The sheer audacity of that boy, using stolen intellectual property to climb our corporate ladder. He thinks I am weak, I said quietly, gripping my napkin tightly. He thinks because he took my dress, he owns my future. Arthur leaned back in his chair, his dark gray eyes gleaming with a calculating, dangerous light. Then we deliver our response where everyone can see it, Arthur said, his deep voice filling the quiet room. Julian wants a grand stage at the Regency. We will give him one. What are you thinking, Arthur? Beatrice asked, looking at her son with keen interest. Julian believes he is going to introduce Chloe as his future bride and take credit for Clara's genius, Arthur explained smoothly, turning to look directly into my eyes. Instead, Clara will walk into that ballroom on my arm. As your fiancé, I whispered, the weight of the proposal hanging in the air. Precisely, Arthur agreed, nodding. A public official engagement. The moment I introduce you as my fiancé and the new executive creative director of Sterling Global, Julian's authority vanishes. He will be forced to present my fiancé's stolen work directly to me in front of the entire board of directors, the press, and his new bride. It will ruin him, Beatrice noted, a sharp smile touching her face. Publicly, professionally, and financially. He won't even be able to secure a basic legal defense once our corporate attorneys step in for fraud. I looked at Arthur, feeling the heat of his gaze. A fake engagement puts your reputation on the line too, Arthur. Are you sure you want to do this? It isn't just about revenge, Clara, Arthur said softly, his fingers tightening around mine with reassuring warmth. It's about placing you exactly where you belong at the very top. Julian tried to make you feel small. I want the world to see how brilliant you truly are. I took a deep, steady breath, feeling the last remnants of my heartbreak dissolve into unbreakable determination. Let's do it, I said, a cold smile spreading across my lips. Let's give Julian a night at the Grand Regency he will never forget. The crystal chandeliers of the Grand Regency ballroom cast a brilliant glow over the crowded room. I stood just outside the heavy double doors, taking a slow, deep breath to steady my racing heart. Are you ready for this, Clara? Arthur asked softly, offering me his arm. I've never been more ready in my life, I replied, lacing my arm through his. I smoothed down the skirt of my dramatic, one-of-a-kind black silk bridal gown. I had spent the last week hand-stitching it in secret, a striking contrast to the ivory gown Julian had stolen from me. Remember, Arthur whispered, bending down slightly as his dark gray eyes held mine with absolute confidence. You belong here. I am right beside you. Through the slight gap in the doorway, I could see Julian standing near the main stage. He wore a sharp tux, holding a champagne flute while gesturing grandly to a small group of corporate executives. Beside him stood Chloe. My blood ran cold for a brief second before turning to pure ice. She was boldly wearing my hand-stitched ivory wedding dress, though she had cheapened it by altering the neckline. She swirled her drink, soaking in compliments from Julian's colleagues with a smug grin. Look at him, I murmured softly to Arthur. He really thinks he won. Not for much longer, Arthur replied, his jaw tightening. Watch how quickly his tower falls. Inside, Julian checked his gold wristwatch nervously, scanning the crowd. Where is Mr. Sterling? Julian asked loudly to his colleague next to him. He was supposed to be here 20 minutes ago. I need to present the new luxury bridal concepts to him directly before the board meeting tomorrow. Don't worry, babe, Chloe purred loudly, touching Julian's arm with her manicured hand. Once he sees this gown on me and reads your proposal, the vice president promotion is yours. You're the most brilliant mind in that firm. I know, Julian boasted, puffing out his chest with an arrogant smirk. I practically built that design portfolio from scratch. Clara could never pull off something this sophisticated. Right on cue, the usher at the front entrance announced in a booming voice, announcing CEO Arthur Sterling. The main doors swung open completely, and the entire ballroom fell dead silent. Arthur stepped onto the plush red carpet, holding my hand firmly in his. I walked beside him with my chin held high, the heavy black silk of my dress rustling softly against the floor. Gasps echoed across the room as hundreds of eyes turned toward us. The bold black bridal design outshined every traditional outfit in the room, radiating pure power, elegance, and defiance. "My God!" someone in the front row whispered loudly. "Who is that woman with Mr. Sterling? Look at that gown. It's breathtaking," another executive exclaimed. I kept my eyes locked straight ahead, watching Julian's face drain of every single drop of color. His champagne glass wobbled violently in his hand. His jaw dropped open as he stared at me in utter, paralyzing shock. "See, Clara?" Julian gasped, his voice trembling so hard the executives around him turned to look at him in confusion. What are you doing here?" Chloe's smug smile vanished instantly, replaced by a pale look of horror as she recognized me standing arm in arm with the billionaire CEO of Sterling Global. "Julian, is that Clara?" Chloe whispered frantically, clutching his arm tight. "Why is she with your boss?" Julian couldn't speak. He just stood there frozen, his eyes wide with sheer terror as Arthur led me gracefully toward the center stage. Arthur reached out and took the microphone from the podium, his authoritative voice commanding the entire room. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen," Arthur began, his voice echoing smoothly through the speakers. "Thank you all for attending the Sterling Global Annual Gala. Tonight is a monumental evening for our firm, as we officially launch our new international luxury fashion wing." The crowd applauded politely, though murmurs were already rippling through the guests about my presence beside him. "Many of you have heard rumors regarding the creative direction of this new division," Arthur continued, his piercing gray eyes scanning the room until they landed directly on Julian's pale, sweating face. "Some within this company have tried to claim credit for the masterworks being produced." Julian choked on his breath, taking a terrified step backward as the spotlight shifted slightly toward him. "However," Arthur said firmly, turning toward me with a genuine, warm smile that lit up his sharp features, "I am proud to officially introduce the sole creative mind, lead designer, and executive creative director of our new division, Clara Vance." The room erupted into loud applause. I smiled, feeling a rush of absolute empowerment as I looked at Julian, whose hands were shaking uncontrollably. "And on a personal note," Arthur added softly, grabbing my left hand and holding it up so the room could see the massive diamond ring resting on my finger, "it is my absolute honor to introduce Clara as my official fiancé." A massive, collective gasp swept through the ballroom, followed by thunderous applause. Julian's eyes bulged in pure horror. He stumbled backward, his knee hitting a high table as his champagne glass slipped from his fingers and shattered against the floor. The sharp sound of breaking glass echoed off the marble floor as Julian stood paralyzed. Drops of champagne splashed across his polished leather shoes, but he didn't even notice. He just stared at me, his face drained of every ounce of color. "See, Clara, fiancé?" Julian stammered, taking a shaky step forward through the crowd. "What is this? What kind of sick game are you playing?" "It's no game, Julian," I said, my voice steady and cool as I adjusted the black silk sleeve of my dress. "It's reality." "No, this is absurd," Julian shouted, turning frantically toward Arthur. "Mr. Sterling, you can't be serious. She's doing this out of pure spite. She was my fiancée until 2 weeks ago. She's using you to get back at me because I gave her dress to Chloe for a photo shoot." The entire ballroom gasped. Murmuring erupted across the crowd like wildfire as corporate executives exchanged shocked looks. Chloe's face turned completely white. She clutched Julian's arm tightly, her voice frantic as she hissed into his ear. "Julian, shut up. Stop talking right now." "I won't shut up," Julian yelled, pointing a trembling finger at me. "She's a local seamstress. She's manipulating you, Mr. Sterling. The bridal portfolio I submitted to you last week, the one that's securing my promotion, that was my vision. She's trying to sabotage my career." Arthur stepped forward, his tall frame blocking Julian's view of me. The air in the room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees as Arthur's gray eyes locked onto Julian with terrifying coldness. "Is that so, Mr. Miller?" Arthur asked, his deep voice carrying effortless authority across the silent room. "You claimed that design portfolio was your vision?" "Yes, absolutely," Julian insisted, sweating profusely as he pulled at his bow tie. "I spent months conceptualizing those blueprints. I have the digital files on my corporate laptop right now." "Then explain to me, Julian," Arthur said calmly, crossing his arms, "why every single image file in that folder contains embedded metadata registered to Claravance's personal studio server over 2 years ago." Julian froze. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. "Explain to me," Arthur continued, taking a slow, deliberate step toward him, "why the hand-drawn structural blueprints you handed my executive board yesterday feature Clara's official trademark watermark in the bottom corner. A watermark you tried and failed to edit out." The board members standing near the stage gasped loudly. "Julian," one senior executive said in utter disgust, "did you steal those designs?" "No. Wait, I can explain." Julian panicked, his voice cracking as he looked around at the judging eyes of his colleagues. "It was a collaborative effort. We were getting married. What's hers was mine. It was never yours, Julian," I said, stepping up beside Arthur and looking down at him with complete disdain. "You couldn't design a simple garment if your life depended on it. You unlocked my boutique, stole my hard work, and lied to your company because you were desperate to pretend you were something you're not. You ruined your own career, Mr. Miller," Arthur added coldly. "As of this moment, you are terminated from Sterling Global. Furthermore, our legal team is filing formal charges against you for corporate espionage, intellectual property theft, and fraud." "Terminated?" Julian whispered, his knees buckling slightly. "Mr. Sterling, please. You can't do this to me. I have loans. I have a mortgage. You should have thought about that before you stole from my fiancé," Arthur replied without a shred of pity. Beside Julian, Chloe's expression shifted from horror to pure rage. She looked at Julian as if he were a poisonous insect. "You lied to me," Chloe shrieked, her voice cutting through the silent ballroom. "You told me you were going to be the vice president of Sterling Global. You told me you owned those designs." "Chloe, babe, please listen to me," Julian pleaded, reaching out for her hand. "Don't touch me, you pathetic fraud," Chloe screamed. In one swift motion, Chloe grabbed a full glass of red wine from a passing waiter's tray and threw it directly into Julian's face. The dark red liquid soaked his white shirt and black tux lapels, dripping down his nose. Julian stood there, drenched in wine, looking utterly humiliated as the crowd erupted into hushed laughter and mocking whispers. "I can't believe I wore this stupid stolen dress for a broke loser," Chloe yelled. She grabbed the delicate ivory veil pinned to her hair, ripped it off, and threw it right at Julian's feet. "Chloe, wait," Julian choked out, wiping wine from his eyes as he tried to grab her arm. "Get away from me," Chloe spat, shoving him back before spinning on her red heels and marching straight out of the ballroom, the heavy oak doors slamming shut behind her. Julian stood completely alone in the center of the room. His career was destroyed, his reputation was shattered, and his dignity was gone. He looked up at me, his eyes filled with tears of despair, silently begging for mercy. I looked down at him, feeling no anger, no heartbreak, and no regret, only absolute, unshakable freedom. I rested my hand comfortably on Arthur's arm, turning my back on Julian forever. The morning light streamed through the boutique windows, illuminating the fresh bolts of silk resting on my cutting table. I took a deep breath of the familiar scent of cotton and lavender, feeling a calm certainty I hadn't known in years. The front door chime sounded, sharp and sudden. I turned around, expecting a morning delivery, but froze as a disheveled figure stumbled into the showroom. "Clara, please," Julian gasped, his voice raspy and broken. He looked unrecognizable. The sleek confidence he once wore like armor was completely shattered. His designer suit was wrinkled, his hair uncombed, and dark, hollow circles shadowed his bloodshot eyes. "You shouldn't be here, Julian," I said softly, keeping my hands resting flat on the wooden counter. My studio is off limits to you. Clara, listen to me. I'm begging you, Julian cried out, collapsing heavily onto his knees in the middle of the floor. He clasped his hands together, tears streaming down his unwashed face. I lost everything last night. Mr. Sterling filed corporate fraud charges against me. My bank accounts are frozen. My apartment lease was canceled this morning, and my career in this city is entirely over. I stood still, watching him weep on the floor where he had once walked as an arrogant fiancé. You brought all of that upon yourself when you chose to steal my work, Julian. I made a mistake. The biggest mistake of my entire life, he sobbed loudly, wiping his wet nose with his sleeve. I was stupid. I was blinded by ambition and Chloe's constant manipulation. The second we left the gala last night, she packed her bags and blocked my number. She took every piece of jewelry I ever bought her and left me with nothing. Chloe didn't force you to take my key, Julian. I reminded him, my tone completely flat. She didn't force you to hand over my mother's lace, nor did she force you to present my design folder as your own to Arthur Sterling. You made those choices willingly. I know. God, I know. Julian howled, crawling forward a few inches on his knees. I was a fool, Clara. I didn't realize what I had until I lost it. I know I hurt you, but I swear I can fix this. I will go to Chloe's place right now with the police if I have to. I will get your original wedding dress back. I will bring back every single stitch. I looked down at the man kneeling before me. A few weeks ago, his betrayal would have torn my heart to shreds. I would have wept, screamed, or demanded answers. But looking at him now, as he groveled on the polished floorboards, I felt no anger, no heartbreak, and no desire for revenge. All I felt was a profound sense of pity for a man who only understood value after he had destroyed it. It's too late, Julian, I said quietly, the words echoing softly through the quiet boutique. It's not too late, he pleaded desperately, grabbing the edge of the counter to pull himself up. We can restart. We can move away from this city. You love me, Clara. You spent 3 years with me. You can't just throw all of that away for Arthur Sterling. He's just using you for a corporate image. Arthur saw my worth when you treated me like a convenience. I replied, meeting his bloodshot gaze with unwavering firmness. And as for the dress you gave away, it was just silk and thread. I can always weave new silk. But the dignity, trust, and respect you threw away, those can never be remade. Clara, please, he whimpered, reaching out a trembling hand to touch my arm. Don't do this to me. I have nowhere else to go. I stepped back out of his reach, picking up the desk phone and dialing the building's front desk. Marcus, I spoke clearly into the receiver. This is Clara Vance in Suite 402. I have an unauthorized intruder in my boutique who refuses to leave. Please send security up immediately. No, Clara, don't. Julian panicked, scrambling back onto his feet as he realized what I had done. You're really throwing me out? After everything we built together? You destroyed what we built the moment you handed my dignity to another woman, I said, setting the phone receiver back onto its base. There is nothing left here for you, Julian. Within 2 minutes, the heavy footsteps of 2 uniformed security guards echoed down the hallway. The door pushed open, and Marcus stepped inside, his stern gaze locking onto Julian. Mr. Miller, you need to step away from Ms. Vance and exit the building immediately, Marcus ordered firmly, grabbing Julian by the upper arm. Clara, look at me, please. Julian screamed as the guards forced him toward the doorway, his boots dragging against the floor. I love you. I've always loved you. Goodbye, Julian, I said softly, turning my back to him and picking up my fabric shears. The heavy glass door clicked shut, cutting off his frantic cries forever. The silence returned to my studio, pure and unbroken. I looked down at the fresh black silk on my table, picked up my measuring tape, and began to work. The thunderous sound of applause echoed through the grand conservatory as the final model stepped off the runway. The warm glow of the stage lights illuminated rows of international journalists, critics, and high-fashion buyers, all standing on their feet, clapping enthusiastically. 6 long months of relentless work had led to this exact moment. The international launch of my signature bridal couture line under Sterling Global had exceeded every expectation. They love it, Clara. They absolutely adore your designs. My lead assistant gasped backstage, fanning her flushed face as the models lined up for the final bow. The fashion critics from Paris and New York are already raving about the collection. We did it, I whispered, a breath of pure relief escaping my lips. I glanced through the velvet side curtain toward the front row. Sitting in the seat of honor was Grandmother Evelyn, looking radiant in a custom navy silk dress I had made for her. She dabbed her wet eyes with a lace handkerchief, weeping tears of pure joy and pride. Beside her, Beatrice Sterling leaned over, smiling warmly as she patted Grandma's hand in congratulation. Your grandmother looks very proud, a smooth, familiar voice murmured near my ear. I turned to find Arthur standing beside me, looking exceptionally handsome in a tailored tuxedo. His dark gray eyes held a warmth and tenderness that went far beyond any corporate arrangement or strategic business deal. She remembers where we started, I said softly, stepping closer to him. 6 months ago, I was standing in an empty studio, believing my world was over because a coward stole my dress. And now you are leading the premier luxury bridal brand in the entire industry. Arthur said gently, taking my hand in his. You did that, Clara. Your talent, your vision, and your courage built this. I looked down at our joined hands. What had started as a cold, calculating alliance to bring down Julian had slowly, beautifully transformed into something deeply genuine. Over months of long late-night strategy sessions, design meetings, and quiet conversations, Arthur had never once tried to control me or diminish my voice. He had listened to my ideas, supported my vision, and treated me as an equal partner in every sense of the word. You helped me find the courage to stand up, Arthur, I admitted, looking into his eyes. When Julian took my work, I felt so small. You reminded me who I was. No, Clara, Arthur corrected softly, his thumb gently caressing the back of my hand. I simply provided the stage. You were always brilliant. I am just the lucky man who gets to stand beside you. He reached into his inner jacket pocket and pulled out a small, velvet ring box. My heart skipped a beat as he opened it, revealing a stunning vintage-cut diamond ring resting inside. Not the corporate diamond we had used for the media, but a custom piece designed with intricate lace-inspired metalwork. Arthur, I gasped softly, my breath catching in my throat. Our fake engagement served its purpose long ago, Arthur said, his deep voice rich with emotion as he held my gaze. This is real. No contracts, no corporate revenge, and no public statements. I love you, Clara Vance. I love your strength, your brilliant mind, and the incredible woman you are. Will you marry me? For real this time? Tears of genuine happiness welled up in my eyes. I looked into his eyes, seeing absolute respect, honesty, and deep devotion reflected back at me. Yes, Arthur, I whispered, a radiant smile breaking across my face. Yes, I will. He slid the ring onto my finger, his hand steady and warm, before pulling me into a gentle, loving embrace. They are waiting for the designer out there, Ms. Vance, Arthur murmured softly against my hair, gesturing toward the brilliant runway lights beyond the curtain. Show the world who you are. Who we are, I corrected gently, sliding my hand comfortably into his. Looking into his eyes, I realized with complete clarity that losing Julian had never been my destruction. It was the necessary catalyst that broke my chains, forcing me to reclaim my worth and step into my true power. The velvet curtain pulled back, exposing the blinding camera flashes and cheering crowd. Holding Arthur's hand firmly in mine, I took a deep breath and stepped out onto the runway toward a brilliant, limitless future, knowing I was no longer defined by someone else's betrayal, but by my own strength and victory.